wild game is a beautiful vessel for food, man. I mean, it does a lot, and I'd rather eat that more than anything else, to be honest.
And that's exactly what this would be. I mean, being in this proximity, it's going to go right into it, and it's going to take out that pristine wilderness.
These are the things you pay attention to. And you do that because you say, these people didn't pay attention to that, and now look at them. This is Hal Herring. We're in Duluth, Minnesota. We're on the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers podcast today. This is sometime in high summer, last June 23rd, I think.
26th.
June 26th. That's scary. But been riding around looking at some beautiful country on Lake Superior. And I'm here to talk with some folks who know it the best. I got Lukas with me. He's sportsman for the Boundary Waters. He's a native Minnesotan with a lot of experience in this part of the world. And I got Minnesota's Mark Norquist, who is the owner of Modern Carnivore. And I'd like to, they're both board members of Minnesota Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And guys who spend a lot of time in the backcountry here. First, I want to get Mark, tell me something what Modern Carnivore is.
Sure.
It's new to me.
Yeah, sure. It's basically, for the most part, a blog that's focused on being a guide for adults who are interested in learning about hunting, fishing, and foraging, but don't have a background in that space. If you think about it, and most people, if they didn't grow up with it, they don't start doing it.
Right.
But there's a lot of things nowadays that are getting people interested in it. People want to know where their food comes from, want to try some new adventures outside, and so we just help guide them down that path.
Gotcha. So do you actively guide hunters?
No, we don't get into guide service. Now, we've got some partners, some different organizations that provide services like that, and we'll help connect people up. That's one of many things. Could be gear, could be where to go, it could be a mentor or guide that physically is going to go out with them in the woods, and we'll help facilitate that just to get people in, because as you know, there's a lot of ins and outs.
Yeah, for sure. I came at it early, but by having taken kids out and then failing really to take their friends out, to take that responsibility on, or I have introduced people to hunting, but I think I admire what you're doing. It is complicated.
Yeah.
If you don't start young, So when you're doing this, what brought you to that? What was interesting to you that you saw that need, or you wanted to do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I grew up hunting and fishing. Done it all my life. It's part of my culture and my family tradition.
This is in central Minnesota?
Yeah, in central Minnesota.
Yeah.
And
yeah, likewise.
And it's just it's something I looked at. So I've worked in marketing and media for many years, and I just saw a need or an opportunity where people are interested again in food, whether you want to call them locavore or foodies, et cetera. People are starting to raise chickens in their urban yards, et cetera, and growing gardens. And I just thought, you know what? Those who are interested in new adventure, maybe they camp today, maybe they go paddling or something. It's just a way to say, hey, if you want to immerse yourself a little bit deeper in that wilderness, that outdoor experience will help you, because there are a lot of barriers to it, whether it's culturally or where to go, knowledge, et cetera. And so just helping on that front.
Gotcha. And are most of these people wanting to hunt?
Yeah, it's interesting. I always think of fishing as sort of the gateway activity.
For sure.
But it's interesting because I think there's a certain factor, an X factor with hunting that's drawing people in. There's a program here in Minnesota, an adult learn to hunt program that's focused on deer hunting. And it's been really successful, and I've been a mentor in that program with the Minnesota DNR. And it's about a 50-50 split, men and women, and going after big game. And so it's interesting. There's just something there that I think people are drawn to.
Gotcha. Well, you could take them out with the atlatl and do the black bear season.
Right.
Here you go. We're going to skip over the preliminaries and go like we're going to go immersion on this one, buddy.
Go all in.
Yeah. So would you have a type of person that's seeking you out, or who is it?
Yeah, I mean it's so I talked a little bit about the people interested in the food side of things, who are maybe they're growing chickens, or they just want to buy grass-fed beef or whatever.
Right. We're in that. I mean,
Yeah.
my family, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so and so that's one, I guess, group of people. Others are more adventurous focused. Some people, come at it from a food perspective, whether they're a paleo diet or things like that.
Right.
I think that's a space of people too.
Yeah, I mean that field to table movement is huge now too. People really want to know where their food is coming from. They want to know that they have the opportunity to go out and acquire it themselves as well. So
Right.
I think we're coming to this point where people want to gain that knowledge a lot more than they used to, which is for me that's amazing. Working with Mark here on Modern Carnivore and my background as a chef, I saw that grow. So it's been pleasant to see people get much more interested than they have been in the past, for sure.
Yeah, I know that whole movement. I mean, I've been hunting since I was a little kid, but that whole movement is. I mean, I'm right in the middle of it. Like I was reading Hank Shaw's book. We don't get all those recipes right, but we refer to that stuff all the time because we live in a town without any restaurants. Last year we were lucky to get 3 deer and an elk, and probably 15 ducks or so. Not enough sharp tails, but and then the fish, and that's how we live. And you want to make it as good as you can. One of the cool things about the chef part of this movement is that you have this. I remember when people said the poorest I ever felt in my life was 1 deer steak and some fried potatoes in a frying pan, and we're the opposite of that. If like you got the deer steak, we're way up, but you want to do justice to the animal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that great cooking does justice to the hunt and the animal in a way that I just think it's totally positive.
Absolutely.
So tell me about your work as a chef. Do you do wild game stuff?
I do, yeah. It's a personal passion as well. I'm really into foraging, so especially wild mushrooms. When the season's actually starting right now. If I wasn't here, I'd probably be out looking at the spots that I have.
Yeah, because you got this rain and stuff in here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Perfect weather right now. It's getting a little warmer, so those mushrooms are starting to pop up. But it was something I did, in the restaurant before I got into actually working for Sportsman for the Boundary Waters was trying to introduce people to wild game.
Yeah.
And or the idea of it, at least giving them the option to understand like what it is, where it comes from. And so that's something that I really, was passionate about pushing in the restaurant, and also doing a lot of these, some of these private dinners that we do. I think it's very cool to work with some of the people that we do and show them that there is an actual way to extremely enjoy that type of meat,
right?
And not have that notion that you gotta really cook the hell out of it and knock it down to something where it feels safe. Or
Italian
whatever.
dressing for like a week.
Or just pan fry everything or whatnot. So I mean, it's wild game is a beautiful vessel for food, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it does a lot, and I'd rather eat that more than anything else, to be honest.
And he's a phenomenal chef. We've had some events where people who have tried wild game before, and are like many people, sort of marginally interested in it, and try something that he's made, and it's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's just fun to see the reaction.
You bet. What do you get? What's your major? Is whitetails your major thing?
Yeah, I think when it comes to larger game here in Minnesota, whitetail and black bear are kind of the main things here. We do have a couple small elk populations, but what I really like to do is I'm big into bird hunting, so that's rough grouse, duck, geese. So that's kind of my thing lately.
Yeah. And where do you do that?
Mostly in central Minnesota, but again, kind of going back to referencing the Boundary Waters here, rough grouse hunting up there is amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think Mark was telling me it's super thick, like it's hard. It's hard hunting.
They're runners before they fly.
I
That's
bet.
big time up there for sure.
And you use a dog in that?
I personally don't. I mean,
you just bust. You're the dog.
Yep, I'm the dog. Yeah. Bust brush and hopefully kick them up. And the beauty of that too is you're in such gorgeous country that you enjoy yourself walking around anyways.
Right.
You get you find or you get a couple birds. It's just an added bonus.
Well, I noticed there's if you're like a mushroom hunter, right? You're doing that while you're hunting.
Exactly.
Grouse. Yeah.
Yeah. There's got to find multiple things to do, you know.
Sure. What kind of mushrooms is it that you're hunting mostly?
Mostly, I miss morels, which is our state mushroom here.
Yeah.
Because I'm up doing opening fishing trips up in the Boundary Waters, but my main thing is chanterelles, lobster mushrooms, chicken of the woods, hen of the woods, and a few other more obscure ones. Porcini, which is in the bolete family. So there's a lot of different edible species or edible versions in that genus as well. So.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I mean we pick morels especially after forest fires.
Yep.
I used to commercially pick, and nowadays we pick and give them for Christmas presents and keep a bunch for ourselves for the winter.
Yeah.
And you can rehydrate them in your like steak grease.
Yep.
We do that. That's about all we got, though. I mean, it's so much leaner where I live. I mean, in that prairie. Today it felt like I was in Alaska. It felt like a jungle compared to like a not an Arctic, but boreal forest.
Yeah.
You know, man. I mean, it's ain't nothing like it.
No, there's not.
And I was I'm pretty impressed by that country and that coastline up here.
Yeah, it's my favorite place in the state and a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
And people ask me, it's like, well, tell me why you love it so much. Describe it to me. It's like, I mean, I can only put in so many words. Like, the best thing I can tell you is, like, let's get you up there. You know what I mean? Let's get you out on a trip. Like, let me bring you into canoe country up there and show you what it's about and let you see and experience it, because you're not going to get the full. You just won't understand unless you do that.
Right.
To be honest.
It's almost like, all that water pouring out of it, like today on those huge waterfalls. You know, you have this feeling of this. There's this mystery back in there.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's definitely the feeling, and you get it around every great wilderness of the world, I think, of a transitional area, and then back in there, you know, something's going on, and if you can get into that, you go into kind of another reality.
Yeah, totally.
And that water pouring out of there today it made me think of that. It's like there's this huge thing back there, this huge system.
Absolutely.
And it's wonderful for me as being a wilderness freak or whatever, to think of, you know, these vast expanses back in there, and you can go there, you can go and see them, but it's definitely a mysterious place. You've transitioned from one reality to another, especially here, Lake Superior.
Yeah.
Those weird little mountains you were showing me, those waterfalls, and then back there.
Yeah. And the weather's even crazier. I mean, you know, you have this vast, like, ocean style lake that creates its own weather too.
Right.
So that's for me, that's one of the aspects that I love the most about the BWCA too, is watching that weather interact during trips, because you know when something's blowing off this lake and how it's going to affect everything else coming from the southwest and northwest, you know. So yeah.
So what does a trip look like in there? Say short or long? Like what are you doing? One of the things I talked a little bit with y'all earlier is this area is truly unknown to me. I've interviewed a lot of other folks on this series, and usually I know them and I know the place, and in this case I don't. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking to y'all, you know, because I'm fascinated by this. So what does a trip look like? Like what do you do? Do you guide up there? Do you fish for yourself or just wander? Or?
I've done both, actually. Yeah. I mean, I guess first and foremost, it's close to 1.1 million acres.
Right.
Is what's designated for the Boundary Waters Canoe and Wilderness, and it's interconnected streams, lakes, only accessible by canoe and portage. So some of the border lakes, they do allow a low horsepower level boat to get in there, but besides that, it's all your personal power getting you around in there. And the experience is it's life changing for one, and it definitely changed my life. But I'm sure we'll get back into that a little bit later. But for me, it's about the fishing, and it's about getting people up there and introducing them to something they've never experienced before.
Yeah.
So. Just to maybe add on the term you used a moment ago, that's for those people who haven't been up there. So when you say portage, it's exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's carrying the canoe and all your gear on your shoulders from lake to lake.
Yep.
Right. And so
designated trail spaces that were cut out by the U.S. Forest Service, and maintained fairly well, but they're rugged. It takes some time, and it can be tough, and it's a good test physically for sure.
That's what Ashley Peters was doing for work, right?
Yeah, what she was doing, clearing the trails up the Gunflint, and I think she was in the Boundary Waters.
Okay.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but that area, actually she was. No,
As a
now that we
Forest
say it.
Service, she was Forest Service Trails.
Forest Service Trails,
Right.
exactly, yeah, because she was, once you get inside the BWCA, it's just, she was talking about crosscut saws.
Right, because it's all
Yeah,
it's
'cause
wilderness, right?
It's wilderness, exactly,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
motorized, so they're
Gotcha.
clearing with handsaws, which that's some serious work.
Right.
Yeah.
She said it was some serious buggage.
Yeah.
The buggage was memorable. Yeah.
Yeah, there's bugs up here, but frankly, the worst is just when they hatch, and that hatch is generally the beginning of June, late May, and they kind of subside after that a little bit. But it's just kind of something that comes with the country we have here too.
Oh yeah.
So.
Every one of the great places in the world's got something.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the fishing when you're fishing that? Are you spin tackle? You're running fly gear? Or?
You can do both. I mean,
Yeah.
there's great opportunities for both. I mean, I'd say
I'm assuming you're meat fishing some though, like to keep fed if
yeah,
you're deep in there.
here and there, yeah. I mean, you got to do it properly. You don't want to go in and just smash a ton of fish and eat 3 meals of it. It's trying to sustain populations too. But I'd say the best thing for people to know is the Grand Slam up there, which is smallmouth, northern pike, lake trout, and walleye.
Gotcha.
Like those are the 4 that people come up there for.
Yeah.
And there's other options too, of course, but
And given the nature of the place, you're not going to fill the freezer with fish anyway, so it's sort of self-regulated. All you can catch is what you're going to have for the meal that night. You got no way to keep it. So
you might be able to pull some out like in spring opener when it's cold, but I mean you got to have the means to do it. Everybody does these trips different. The outfitters up there and guides, like some do cooler pack stuff, some do a lot of dry pack, dehydrated, freeze dried things, and I mean if you have that cooler option, you might want to get those people that you guided out. It could be who knows, Arkansas, New Zealand, who knows where they're coming from. We get a lot of different people up here, but they might want to take some fish out with them.
Right, sure. And you're throwing different, like for lake trout. What do you throw? How do you fish that?
So
and I'm assuming they're deep, right?
Most of the time they are.
Yeah.
In the spring and the opener though, they're much shallower because once that ice comes out, that water's still warm. So you actually have the opportunity to fish offshore if you want with bobber systems. But the main thing is dragging spoons and lures for sure.
Yeah.
And checking water flowages and drop offs and
cold
water
inlets,
pockets
outlets.
and
Yeah.
Yep.
And so when y'all are portaging, are you're portaging on dry land, or are you dragging through shallow water connections? This is a
sometimes it depends on like what kind of weather we've gotten up there.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was just up. I brought my dad up a few weeks ago, and I had to drop the canoe and drag it through some pretty deep muck. I mean,
there's some swampy areas sometimes. There's other ones. There's a lot that are just beautiful, just rocky, nice. There's even the stairway portage up from Duncan to Rose, which is
where you put the yoke over your back and you just kind of wander up to it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, and throw a pack on, grab the canoe, and take it slow. Enjoy the scenery around you, unless you're in a hurry, which happens, But you got to be careful, It's stuff gets slippery. People don't understand that those rocks, when they get wet, I mean, it in a heartbeat turns into something that can be dangerous too.
So, I bet. So tell me, so let's talk gear for a little bit. What's your shoes? What boots do you wear for something like that? I mean, obviously you don't want hiking boots in the boat all day.
Yeah.
What do you wear?
I mean, there's a couple different options. So you can either dry load or wet load a canoe. And it depends, if you're going through a certain outfitter, guides kind of have their different opinions on that. So if you're wet loading, you're wearing boots that have kind of like, if you got the right ones, boots that are knee boots that have kind of like the fly fishing felt on the bottom, so you're not slipping on the rocks. And then you wet load all the packs in.
That means you put the boat out there and load the packs in while it's in the water. Okay.
Yep, exactly, and you get in the same manner. I've done that. I think it's just as easy to get that boat in and keep it from scraping on rocks to dry load as well. So decent ankle protecting waterproof
Exactly.
boots,
Yeah.
and because you can that way, even with some good grip like Vibram soles or something,
Right.
You can still step on some of those rocks within the water.
Right.
And
But you're not wading around.
no, you're not
Right.
waiting. No.
Gotcha. And
no.
what's the bottom like on most of this stuff? Like, is it sand, muck, rock?
Not a lot of sand,
No.
rock,
Lot of rock.
or muck if you're
Yeah.
in some of the back swampier transition areas, but otherwise pretty rocky.
Gotcha. And if you're so your canoe is what? It's got a keel on it. What's a model canoe that works good for this kind of? I do rivers.
Yeah.
I almost never do lakes, and I don't currently own a lake canoe. I had a $50 Coleman, and I pulled in the driveway and caught it on a tree and tore it in half, and it was my last lake canoe.
It'll be a little heavy for this. The traditional over, I guess, the last 30, 40 years, the Grumman or Alumacraft aluminum canoes are very popular. But now what you'll mostly see up there is Kevlars.
Right.
And that's what the outfitters are doing. A little bit higher charge, but the weight difference is, I think an average Kevlar 1670 foot's about 44 pounds, something like that.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, for sure.
And then, like I've got an Old Town that's made out of Royal X that's about 65 pounds. It's right in between like an aluminum and a Kevlar.
And what do you know what model that is?
That is, it's actually a model they I don't know if they make it anymore. It's called the Predator, which is it's camel.
Yeah.
But it basically is their camper model, just camoed up for
So are they wider for gear, for hauling gear?
Yeah, it depends on the model for sure. I mean, they definitely make canoes specific for the canoe country up there that a little bit wider that hold what we kind of call Portage Packs. It's a certain kind of boxy pack that fits in there and stabilizes the canoe.
Gotcha.
Easy to carry down the portages, and you can also double pack which is when, to kind of minimize travel and having to go back, you carry one on the front, one on the back as well.
Yes, I've never seen that.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's kind of the classic thing that they used to do when doing a lot of the traveling, those like the Border Route Trail and all that stuff up there. Is from what I read, their average weight was like 90 pounds a pack on each side.
Yeah.
That's insane. I mean,
No.
we don't do that. I mean, that's a lot of weight to put in a pack. Like,
Not a lot of fleece.
No.
Back then.
yeah, you're carrying a lot of wet wool and provisions and stuff. But
a lot of cotton.
Bacon.
Yeah.
yeah, and bacon for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bannock mix and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'd say now the average pack size is probably 40 to 60.
Probably in there, yeah. And the key is
Depends on the trip.
Yeah.
if you can avoid doing a double portage, where you can, that's what's nice if you can do that. Just get over, so you're going from Lake A to Lake B, and you're
not have to
having
come back and
Exactly.
grab again.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen, but
Yeah.
it depends on the type of trip you're doing.
Yeah.
We did a video and film a couple years ago where we had a lot of gear, and so I think we had to double portage on those. But you don't want to do it if you don't have to.
Well, no, yeah, I can see the yo-yo effect would be demoralizing.
Right,
Come
right.
back, yeah. And so what's like the average length between the lakes? Or is there, or
It
varies.
varies.
I saw the map, so it looks like a scattered shot of thousands of lakes.
It's also measured by rods,
Exactly.
and a rod is 16 and a half feet.
You bet.
So
It's 60 and a half?
16 and a half.
16 and a half.
Canoe
Okay.
length,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, exactly. So yeah. Gosh, I mean,
got
I've done 5 rod portages, and I've done
I've done
420
I was gonna
rod
say,
portages. So,
exactly, yeah.
You're going from crawling to a mile and a quarter pretty quick sometimes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Some are flat, solid ground. Some are peaked up, and then you're going through swampy area. It varies. It's all
Gotcha.
over the board.
Yeah. Is there a part? Do you have a favorite part of that country or the best fish? I mean, you don't have to give away your spot or nothing, but like, is there a place in there that stands out to you in that whole region?
Well, so we kind of have 2 spaces that we call the gateways to the wilderness, right? One is out of Ely, which is on kind of the southwestern side of the wilderness.
Okay.
And then one is up Grand Marais up the Gunflint, and you guys were up in Two Harbors earlier, and it's, another hour and a half drive
a couple
up.
hours, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so and honestly they're both a bit different in my
They are.
opinion. And
Yeah.
I personally am I grew up going up the Gunflint side and targeting a lot of lake trout. So my main thing for me is those deep, clear water, cold lakes
Gotcha.
that hold those lake trout,
And
especially
they're not tannic stained. They're not
No.
tannic acid stained.
Some are
Uh-huh.
for sure. It depends on where you're getting into, but yeah, there's definitely some tannic stain up there.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
But some of that's like Clearwater Lake.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
even if there's some tannic stain, I mean the water clarity remains pretty
Still good,
pretty
yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good quality, even
Yeah.
if it's that way. Yeah, it's I enjoy going on both sides of it. So it's the Gunflint is a beautiful area on sort of the east side here, but on the west in Ely. A few years ago, my wife and I took our kids up on their first trip, and our daughter, I think she was 3, and she did her first portage. I think she did it was about a 50-rod portage in flip-flops.
Right
so
on.
anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was great because we were able to camp actually with an outfitter right on the edge on Moose Lake, and actually that's one of those lakes that Lukas mentioned where you could do small motors on some of those border lakes.
Yeah.
So I brought up my small fishing boat. I got a 14-foot aluminum boat with a 10-horse, and I brought the canoe. And so we were able to, with our kids, in a very simple way, camp right on the edge.
Yeah.
We were able to motor up, get some great walleye fishing in, and then for a couple days we'd canoe back and we'd do some portages, got them to get the feel of it without it being overwhelming.
Yeah.
So-
Gotcha.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I love Ely too. It's just the only reason I'm partial to the Gunflint is just that's what I was introduced to.
That's what
that's
you
what
know.
I grew
Absolutely.
up
That's
doing.
always
And that's
the
what I know.
way,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've done some trips up in Ely as well, and know a lot of the outfitters over there, and it's they're both amazing spaces.
Is
for
there
sure.
do people bear hunt in there too? Is there big game hunting inside all this expanse?
There is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I always I was looking at the map but it's primarily a wandering place and a fishing place.
Yeah.
I mean, is there whitetails living in there?
Yeah,
There is,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
That it's. I think the main thing for people that go up there and hunt whitetail is it's a bit more challenging too, and they get to experience some.
So we had we had moose in there too, and we had moose season up until I applied for a tag for several years, never got drawn, actually in the boundary waters because not many people were going for those, and
Right, I bet.
and I didn't have the plan as to how to get that out of there.
The
Once-
double wide canoe. Yeah, and a bunch of friends. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
that brings a whole different aspect to it. The way you're getting that meat out too,
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh, absolutely. But yeah, we know guys that go in do deer hunts in there, and a couple BHA guys that we know that's their thing. They bring a wall tent in, and that's where they do their camp. As you and I were talking about earlier, Hal, it's pretty thick woods though, and so
Right.
you just got to find the right spot.
And you're do you know that these guys they do portable tree stands or?
I don't know if they were stand hunting or not. I wouldn't be surprised if they were ground hunting, but very likely doing a tree stand.
You'd have to be pretty sure there was something coming before you put the tree stand up. Or,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But a self climber on those pines up there would work really well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it actually would
Yeah.
be nice.
I mean, a couple people I know that are going up there doing is they're doing a lot of spot and stock too.
Yep.
So, and that's actually the opportunity that I have this year is hopefully might try and go up with Daryl Spencer, who's former
Daryl Zonum, exactly. Yeah.
former president of the local chapter here of Isaac Walton League.
Cool.
And so a really good guy.
And what is what's the tag like? Like is it a general deer tag that you could use there?
It is a general deer tag.
Yeah, so it varies by year on whether you've got hunter's choice or you've got
Right,
managed
exactly.
managed
Gotcha.
section, what have you.
Right.
But up here it's probably a doe is probably a lottery and get your buck tag.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know anything about the way Minnesota runs that. It's Wisconsin and Minnesota, neither the whitetail world. I've never hunted either one of them. Do you? Is there a particularly back of the beyond part of this thing where not many people go, or is it generally visited by some?
It's so big and deep. I mean, you could
Yeah.
go
It's
for
bigger
so
than
long.
Yellowstone.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's almost like, for instance, like walking into a city and like how deep can you get in like 3 days, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a lot of people get into those border lakes and into some of the main lakes that catch a lot of traffic. And
Yeah.
it really comes down to, if you take enough time to travel in, you can put yourself in a space where you will not see people for a
Absolutely.
very long time. Yeah.
Right. I can imagine that.
The average trip is probably 4 to 8 days, somewhere in that range, and
Yeah.
so you've got a limit. If you think about it, you map it out. You've got a limited number of options for routes.
Right.
You go beyond that, you could get in really deep, and
Right.
like Lukas said, you'd be hard pressed to see a person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's permit based for a good portion of the year, and really the only thing that you're doing with that permit is you're allowed 9 people, 4 watercraft, and you have to all stay on one campsite, and you have to go in on the entry point that you submitted for that permit.
Okay.
Beyond that, you really don't have to come out anywhere.
Right.
I mean, like, you can stay as long as you want.
Until you run out of food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I could go get a permit right now and go in somewhere with somebody, and then you're technically supposed to put an exit date on there. I
Yeah.
could just say like September 30th or
Right,
something.
sure.
And if I show up earlier than that, they're not going to be coming and looking for me.
Right. And what happens in there in the winter? Is it all frozen?
It is.
Yeah.
And could you wander like at will in there on snowshoes across the ice and make it?
Yeah, so that's when there are no permits during the winter, and so you can go in with more freedom. And we were just talking the other night with one of the guys here where we're going to maybe try to do a spearfishing trip this winter. Head in there. And do
it's no overnight permits.
Okay, right.
You hand fill one out basically.
Yeah.
You got to have that on
Thanks
you.
for
but that's it.
clarifying.
Yeah.
And so spearing for pike.
Yeah, spearing
or
for
walleye.
pike, exactly. Yeah.
And so you're packing in an ice house, right?
So, and that's what we were talking about. So I just started this last winter experimenting with this portable I've got.
Yeah.
So, and it worked pretty well. I've always just done permanent houses.
Yeah.
And my brother had done this, and so I tried it out, and it worked really well. And so we were talking about how you could easily pack that into a sled.
Right. I was going to say the sled is the way to go in the winter. I mean, and you got enough snow in there, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Deep,
Most years, at least.
Oh, it's. I mean, you're in the Arctic tundra up there
Yeah.
when it gets into winter season, and ice fishing is amazing too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
I've
we got
always
great
wanted
ice
to get in there
fishing
for.
up there.
My dream is to pull a laker through the ice, and
Right.
that's what I have.
And that
I
could be
haven't
done,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
This guy was doing it last winter.
Yeah.
I've just got into it in the last couple of years, just having the opportunity given to me and having the time actually to go up and do it. Honestly,
Yeah.
really, and it's fun, man. You get out there, and it is. You're dragging sleds, either cross country skiing or snowshoeing.
Yeah.
With you're doing it with yoking. So like
Right. And you're
generally-
pulling a hand auger?
hand
you'd have
augers.
to. Yeah,
Yep.
you couldn't bring a gas.
Oh, that's
auger
right,
in.
because it's
Yeah.
a wilderness.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you better pick those holes right, man. Because
Yeah,
after you
that's
drill
right.
about 10 of those.
So we talked about going early season.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I got a hand auger I found in the dump. I got a hand auger that somebody got disgusted with and gave me. And I got another one that has got no blades on it, and all of them have beaten us at one time or another. I'm just not very good at it yet, and so I bought for like $40 a power auger, and we pull on that thing for 30-40 minutes, drill a few holes, and
Yeah.
But the hand auger's away really because you don't have this. That power auger is pretty problematic, and when it's really cold.
It really is.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I have
absolutely.
one that big lake that I have a permanent house on down in central Minnesota, and man, that hand auger
you can
or
go
that gas auger, man.
You can
it's
go
just,
$500 and get a propane one or an electric drill thing and stuff, and you're starting to be okay, But
I got my last gas operated auger I'll ever get. When
Yeah.
this one's done, I'm going to go to the battery, go
You
to
bet.
lithium ion.
Yeah,
That's the way to go.
I got one from a guy who did exactly what you said, and he said, "Yeah, I got it for you." And he gave it to me. I think I paid $50, and
Yeah.
he was pretty wily about like its efficiency and its starting. He started it for me. You see? Yeah, but that sounds
Tricks of
fun.
the trade.
Man. Yeah, that sounds really fun. And I can't imagine the solitude and the quality of like stargazing and solitude in there in the winter, man.
Oh, it's
Northern
amazing.
Lights.
Northern
A
Lights,
person
yeah,
could
for
just
sure.
go on a drift forever.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and just like the dead, like stagnant silence too that you get up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Is there snowshoe hare in there?
Yeah, I think there's snow. I think
There-
I haven't seen myself.
there are, but
Yeah.
kind of
Not enough to eat one. Not
yeah,
enough
few
to
and far between.
count
I
on
mean,
it.
I wouldn't take a trip up there to rabbit hunt.
Right. Or take a trip depending on the rabbits to feed you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So y'all are so when you say you're in sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, what is that group formed for, and what do you do? What are you doing when you're that?
So we're a coalition of sportsmen, women, businesses, and organizations committed to defending the boundary waters for future generations and for what we have right now. And what we're currently working on is we're trying to raise awareness against proposed sulfide or copper mining up there within the watershed of the BWCA and Voyageurs National Park, which is up there as well, and also the Quetico Provincial Park, which is kind of the equivalent of the Canadian equivalent of the BWCA.
That's the Ontario side.
Yep.
And is it similar terrain?
Yeah, it's similar, but operated a bit differently. You know, they're primitive campsites, no live bait, barbless lures, and so whereas in the BWCA you can bring live bait, can't transfer live bait from or live fish from lake to lake, and you know you can use whatever lures you want, and the campsites are managed by the U.S. Forest Service, so there's cooking grates and
Cool.
Yeah. So.
And this, tell me some more about like that. What y'all are concerned with as the mining or other challenges or threats to the area. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently in an area right now where Antofagasta, which is the owner of these leases, it's a foreign mining company out of Chile. Their current leases are denied for the proposed sulfide or copper mining, and we're in a 2-year withdrawal, meaning there's a bit over 234,000 acres that are withdrawn from the federal leasing program that are under review for an environmental study to see if that type of mining can be done up there properly without polluting that area.
Are these on Superior National Forest, or what are these leases? These are on public land?
Yep.
Okay.
And so the main issue is that there's about 14 examples at least between like British Columbia, international mines, and mines in the U.S. that have all shown that they pollute in some manner at some point.
Right.
And the problem with that is that the byproduct of this type of mining is sulfuric acid and other heavy metals.
Okay.
And that leaching into the water system, you know, affects the pH of the water and goes all the way down from, you know, the microorganisms up to the main flora and fauna. Yeah. So it affects the ecosystem completely, and really what we're trying to do is prevent that from happening. And it's a case of this type of mining shouldn't be done in such a sensitive place. You know, we're not trying to push it out somewhere else and say, you know, put this in someone else's backyard. We're just saying that this is the wrong place for this.
Right.
Not anti-mining by any means. You know, this state is a taconite iron ore mining state. You know, that's what we do.
We saw the ships today.
Yeah, I mean, we're in Duluth right now. You know, I mean, so it really has nothing to do with anti-mining. It has to do with the fact that this type of mining is proposed in a space that is too sensitive and shouldn't have the opportunity to get polluted. There's no reason for it.
Right.
Really, I mean, and once it gets in there, part of the bylaw for the BWCA is there's no room for remediation either. Right. So if it gets in there, how do you even clean it up in the first place?
Gotcha. You bet. What and is the ore body there? Like, is it like they obviously leased it for a reason?
There is,
but it looks like it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the largest copper ore bodies. Yeah. So it's the Maturi deposit. It runs into the BWCA as well. But where they actually have the proposed mines are in one of the shallower spaces, and it happens to be at least one of them. There's 4 spots where they propose the mines, the actual mine spaces that they're doing.
Okay.
And the closest one is within a half mile of the wilderness border itself, almost right on the border.
Yep. Well, that would be an unfortunate occurrence, huh?
Yeah, it really would.
And is there a road infrastructure, open pits and stuff like that? How do they do that?
They'd be drilling down in, most of it would be underground. From what I understand, although you'd have these tailing ponds,
Right.
And so and that right there, that's the risk when you look at.
So that's closer to what we're dealing with in Montana with that Smith River mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. And one of the things we talk about with Smith River, I talked about in the car today driving around, but we have failed to find an example of one of these that didn't go long-term trouble for both the ground, the water, and all that stuff, and the taxpayer.
Taxpayer cleans up. That's happening in British Columbia right now with Mount Poly.
Yeah,
they're stuck with the cleanup on that.
Some of that.
Yeah.
And
then
the blowout.
Butte.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, the blowout. Yeah, for extreme example.
Yeah.
And I understand, like an old timer one time told me, he goes, "We won World War II with the copper from Butte, Montana," and I said, "I got you. Point taken. Understand that, but we've been paying for it ever since, and we did need to win World War II. I'm not sure we couldn't have won World War II without like leaving a legacy of 100 years of multi-million, if not billion-dollar cleanup. But point taken.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I think that if you don't learn something from your past experiences, I mean, you're an idiot. I mean, if you drive your car 25 mile an hour around a curve, then you wipe out and flip it and break your back, and the next time you do it, you come to that curve, go, I think I'll go 125 again. Worked out good last time. That doesn't. It's just like I'm ready. I'm ready for us to either achieve the technological miracles that they say they can achieve that doesn't pollute anything while they get the ore body, or let's learn something from the past and say there's a lot of places where we just can't really let you do this because you blew it for 175 years.
Yeah, exactly.
All precedents at stake.
Well, and when you think about a place like this, like we talk about, there's over 2,000 lakes within the boundary waters. And so this proposed mine is right on the edge, in the watershed, on the edge of the physical land border, but within the watershed. And you gave in your talk a couple days ago, I liked the way you said it, of to have the thought that you could take some Drano and inject it into your arm and think it's not going to harm your heart.
Right, my heart will be fine.
And that's exactly what this would be. I mean, being in this proximity, it's going to go right into it, and it's going to take out that pristine wilderness.
Right. Yeah, that's hard. It's hard when you have so much of your life invested in a place. It's much harder. It's not in my backyard thing, but it is. My backyard is now one of the most important places to me. Why wouldn't I question what's in my backyard? Good Lord, man. And I see this. I don't see it all over the country. I think it's probably a unique situation as well. I mean, they got Smith River, they got challenges everywhere, but it's a mistake to think that one is like another because they're not. And this thing is, it should be questioned by those who know the most about it, but know the place the best.
Absolutely.
What did y'all? How did you get into that? Did that come up while you were you already at Backcountry Hunters and Anglers? Did Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters come about because of these challenges?
Yeah, I mean they most certainly did. How I got into it is kind of an interconnected story with Mark here. Honestly, I started doing some cooking videos and stuff with Mark at Scout where he was previously at, and
what's Scout?
Scout. I don't know if it exists anymore. So it used to be called North American Media Group.
Okay.
Yeah, which was two of the big brands were North American Hunter, North American Fisherman, magazines, TV shows, etc. And so we brought Lukas in to do some crossover with our cooking club and the hunting club on doing some wild game cooking. So we did some different pieces with him. So that's how we met originally. And then
so we met that way. I also really kind of got a couple opportunities from Tori McCormick, who's a freelance writer and was at Outdoor News at the time. Gave me a call and actually did a pretty thorough story in the Star Tribune on a Sunday outdoors section, and I think that's actually
That's
kind of
how I found you.
That's
Exactly.
how you found me.
Yeah.
And that story was on what?
That story was kind of on my background in fishing, hunting, and cooking, and pretty much my views and ideals on it at that time, and what it meant to me, and how it kind of could apply to others as well. So,
Gotcha.
I think that was kind of in a nutshell what it was, more or less.
Yeah. How did you get into cooking?
Man, I don't know.
I mean, did you
Mike,
work? Did you work professionally?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So I worked professionally for a long time. Was an executive chef for quite some time, and really got interested in learning how to cook from the land, and foraging and hunting and fishing, and how that applies and creates relationships, introduces people to it.
Right.
And that kind of fed into how I got involved with Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters in the campaign as well, because
it already existed before you.
It did.
Right. Okay.
Yep. And I had actually, at the job I had, I kind of quit and went separate ways and decided to take some time to do some traveling.
Okay.
And that ended up spending a lot more time up in the Boundary Waters as well, and did a lot of work doing some volunteering with them. And I actually made a phone call and just kind of pitched, like, I know you might need someone in the sporting community. I feel like I could help you guys out a lot with this. And a few interviews later, I ended up working in what I do now, working in conservation and policy, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's interesting that the integration of like the love of a place and foraging there and cooking, and then advocacy for keeping it in a healthy state, right? And I honestly think that there would be millions of people doing that. If you have there, millions of sportsmen sort of do it now, not enough of them, but there would be millions of people doing that if we actually knew, like, where your food came from, and how how what a bounty, say, in a place like this is, and you wouldn't risk that for somebody else's plan, that it's not even not even one of your countrymen.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to play the patriotism jingoistic card or whatever, but I will, because basically when you have a global world, I mean, they don't care really what you're doing in Minnesota. It's just true.
We are stuck like smack center in the continent too. So
right, yeah.
there's a lot of pre-notions that people have about our state, and it's I think it's very important to educate people on what we have here, because we do it's an amazing place. We have so much going for this state, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, but being here in Duluth, you see, you see this incredible and one of the things I really liked about this is where I grew up in North Alabama, the population grew up really big, and it kind of ate us. It ate our farm and my lifestyle. Like the first place, the longest shot I've ever seen intentionally made on a whitetail. It's like 675 yards, and it was one of those things where a buddy goes, "Hey, watch this," But it was off his. He lived in a double wide with a porch on it, and he laid a BAR 7mm across that porch that he had built. It was kind of rickety thing, and he shot this deer in it, and I said, "Man, I think you killed it." We couldn't really see. You can't see it far. I didn't have any binoculars, because you don't have binoculars in Alabama. And there's nothing. You can't see that far, right? It's kind of like up in the woods here. So we never carried around binoculars. Yeah. And we drove there, and there's like 6 houses in the path of that bullet now. Right. And a pond and people's a whole couple of horses, but mostly there's just houses. And that this place, on the contrary, is kind of filling back in from an earlier age, which seems to be much more healthy thing for us to do, to leave the bush, and refill the places that we kind of wrecked and are now fixing. Which is such a big thing here, man.
Somebody, I don't know if it was you, Hal, or somebody had mentioned this weekend that from a conservation perspective, if we've got a species that's in dire condition, we've got great examples of bringing those back. We can't do that with the land. When we lose it, it's gone.
Yeah, that's right.
It's gone, and that to me was just a great way to.
That's
to
such
think
a
about
that's a beautiful point. I mean,
Right.
you can't really say it any better than that.
it.
Yeah, I don't know who said that. It wasn't me, but I know exactly what he means.
Well, I'm going to tell people you
Yeah,
said it.
I better take it. Yeah, I will say I was. There's a book, and I hope I don't put this on every interview I've done, but there's a book called, and I can't remember the author. It's called Dirt: The Erosion of Civilizations, and it really is basically a primer of how, from the Middle East through England, we've just lost enough topsoil to totally. The Middle East is paying the price now. And they're 3,800 years ahead, basically, of the rest of us, and maybe 10 million goats or whatever. But it's a irrefutable. I highly recommend the book. It's not a hard book to read. It's cool.
I've seen it.
It's a well written, easy read book, and it's just pretty much like, buddy, if you want to be around with anything quality of life that you want, these are the things you pay attention to, and you do that because you say these people didn't pay attention to that, and now look at them. Now look at you. But it's the boundary waters, that water that we're watching pour out of there today. I mean, that's the focal point for civilization. That's the prerequisite for any kind of civilization anybody want to live in. And I would say too that wilderness like this is the prerequisite for the spiritual quality of life and physical quality of life that we're hunting in the United States of America anyway.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe they could do without that in Britain or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
but I'm not going to do without it.
When I was introduced to it by my dad, he calls it going to church.
Yeah.
The woods are our church.
Yeah.
And it's a good point. Like you were making, Mark. It's like we can't get the land back after we do something to it. I mean,
right.
it's gone. Society and community can spread as far as it needs to, but we need to hold on to these special places that we have.
Right.
You mentioned how just Europe, the UK, wherever. I lived in the UK for a while, and I hunted. Yeah, and I went hunting and fishing there. I had 2 opportunities. Go fishing on the River Test, and then got to shoot driven pheasant, and it was a fun experience to have.
I bet it was.
It was great to experience it and to say, I want to go back home though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because it's just a different mindset. It's a different because it's all gone. It's all privatized and here, and that's the beauty of this. Anyone and everyone can go up there and go fish and hunt in this beautiful place, and it is unequaled anywhere in terms of just the pristine beauty of it, and that's why it's important to protect. And if we lose it, we won't get it back. And so we got one of the things the campaign
it's
says.
our public lands.
It is. It's our public lands, and we got one chance.
Exactly.
And that's
we literally do.
Yeah, we literally do. And so we got to make a choice. And I know where I stand on it.
Right. You bet. Well, I would rather walk up rough grouse or sharptails all day and maybe shoot 2 or 3 than shoot driven grouse all day in my tweed jacket and my little hat or whatever you got to wear,
Yeah, exactly.
And I got my old flawed lab, and he was putting birds up 200 yards away, and we're screaming at him, and that's fine. It's all on public ground. That's,
Yep.
It's a full experience.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know, when you were little, did you, how old were y'all when you started going in there?
I took my first trip when I was 13, and been going every year since.
And y'all had canoes?
Yep.
Yeah, I noticed everybody here. This is like the outdoorness place. Driving around today, I felt right at home. I was like, here comes like all the boats, and then everybody's got a boat on the top of the truck, and the truck might be like really old, and the boat's like super nice, or the boat's all hammered, but it's obviously somebody's like going there after work,
right,
in the boat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an outdoor mecca here, definitely in terms of how everybody approaches lifestyle.
It is. And the people are look like they're equal to it. Like they're all kind of fit looking. They look like we talk a lot about this in these interviews too. And there's places all over the country. I live in one, Clarendon, Arkansas, the Arkansas Delta, where they duck hunt all the time. one. The landscape defines the people, rather than the people defining the landscape, because the weather's so harsh in the brush, and you're more equal. Like you're trying to be equal to the landscape that you live in because you can enjoy it more, And the people are just healthier. They're stronger, man.
Yeah.
And everybody, they look like they're having a good time. Like when we were at that waterfall today.
Yeah.
All those girls that were climbing up this
like
giant
Billy
rock
Goats.
thing. Yeah, it was like they were wild.
Oh,
and that's great.
That's summer up the shore here, man. I mean,
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, all those girls they were on some kind of outing. They're all like 12. They're all like 12 years old, and they were completely running like wow. But they were safe.
Yeah.
They were. I mean, what they were doing.
What they were
wasn't
doing
safe.
was safe, but like what we talked about, it was great. Of like we're up on these cliffs, and there's no signage, there's no gate. It's just like, hey, be careful.
Yeah.
Watch your step.
It's pretty straightforward words. I mean, like
one of the best sign up there was like swimming wasn't recommended, right?
Yeah.
And they go, we're not saying you can't do it, and that's public lands, public spaces to me.
Exactly.
Managed in the best possible way, which is just like have at it, fellas, and test yourself. Try not to kill yourself, but swimming's not recommended. In this particular plunge pool.
Yep.
Take responsibility for yourself and have fun.
Do it right and respect it.
Yeah.
And they were really climbing that rock too.
They were,
My daughter is like 2 years older than that now, and I would remember her and her like gang of friends, spreading out across the landscape. And that's what they were doing. Everybody was having a good time because they had freedom. They were free to go wander in that beautiful place. And then from what I'm getting from y'all too, is like in the boundary waters is that plus 1.1 million acres.
Yep. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, if you got anything else you want to add on this, like y'all, what are we missing here on this?
I think we touched on a lot of good stuff. I mean, I think it's we got to get you up into the boundary waters here soon.
I want to
Absolutely.
fish it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Would love to take you out for that
winter.
anytime.
That ice fishing stuff sounds pretty cool.
That's fun, man.
Yeah.
You get proper. I mean, you got to have the proper gear too. I've done it.
I got
without
the proper
gear.
clothes. I don't have the proper. I don't know how you do that, but we do a lot of ice fishing.
Yeah.
But it varying degrees of success too. I'm not.
Likewise.
Not a king. I'm not the king of that, buddy.
It's okay to get snuffed every once in a while. It happens.
So what are sometime I'm fishing Flathead Lake and we come off the lake. There's a lake whitefish bite in there. I hadn't done it in a few years, but we used to get like 50. I think the limit was 50. They were trying to get rid of them at one point.
We don't even have a limit here. No, and there's whitefish up in the boundary waters.
And those are the big plank, the ones you make the planks out of. But when you catch a lake trout, how do you cook that? What's your trick on that?
Man, I mean, best is fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying for a long time that
Are they oily?
not the ones honestly within the boundary waters. There's a difference comparatively to say out here on Superior that are feeding out a lot.
'Cause what they eat.
Yeah, exactly. Feeding on Cisco's and larger forage and stuff, so they do get oilier and fattier.
Yeah.
Within the BWCA, they're what they're eating is a lot different. So you get more of that color, like salmon char color that you're used to seeing, and man, they fry up well. I mean, for me, like just pan fry shore lunch style. And if we're out in a lot of those spring trips, so we end up having a lot of leftover bacon grease.
Yeah.
So frying those up in bacon grease is the best. Yeah.
Do you put
literally, I've done it so many times, but that's the best.
Do you put any rub on them at all?
I did experiment with that a little bit this year. Just pan frying with like some blackening seasoning and stuff that I made up, and that was fantastic too. But you get some classic seasoned flour, whatever you prefer, and fry them up in bacon grease.
So you're
Honestly, there's
battering them a
nothing
little
better.
bit?
Just very lightly, yeah. Kind of shake and bake in a Ziploc bag, and just having like a base layer, not like frying them, just like pan searing them in that batter. So they don't want to get all greasy.
Yep.
They still retain a ton of juiciness and flavor. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And then on that whitefish, are you planking them up and deep fat frying them?
Honestly, I've done a lot of different stuff with whitefish, and they really honestly pan sear up really well. Deep frying is fine enough, but they're a bit fattier too. So they kind of do the work for you. Yeah.
If you'll get them just hot enough there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did the lake trout stuff. We smoked a lot of them.
Yeah, that's
And
a
that
big
was-
thing around.
yeah.
That's a big thing with Superior
Yeah.
lake trout is smoking
We
for
stopped
sure.
at the what's the place called? The
Russ Kendall's Smokefish House.
Kendall's.
Upstairs,
And
yeah.
there's
Oh, you guys, this up there.
Yeah, we
Nice.
did. Yeah, he's got
there's
it.
some good. It smells so good. You know,
Yeah.
you walk in there and there's some good looking fish in there.
Yeah, I mean, smokefish is great for sure. I mean, and that's definitely something like to backtrack to what I was saying about not taking fish out too often. But like, if you were to take them out of the boundary waters and freeze them when you brought back, smoking would be the best
You
way
can
to go
smoke
about
on
it.
site
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there a particular wood you use in there for that, or just whatever you can get?
I think that's personal preference. Honestly, I mean, you never really know.
Yeah. It's what
I like
you
to-
got too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll do like maybe some fruit woods or
Yeah.
use apple, maybe a
Apple.
little juniper with it or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. I'm with Mark on that one.
Yeah, we tried alder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Older. Yeah.
Alder works well.
Yeah, and it's softer, but it's like the all the salmon are done on alder because there's nothing else, you know. But well, fellas, I really appreciate this one, man. This is great stuff, and
It's been fun.
what we'll have to do is just keep track of what y'all are doing. Maybe we can get another one in if anything develops, or y'all need to if I can make a trip out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to have you out.
And,
Good reason to get you out here.
it's a good reason, you bet. And if you're ever like drifting through, central Montana, it's come see us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Hal.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you,
all
Hal.
you
Really
do.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Talk soon.
All right, sounds good.